Hi, June here with my thoughts for today. And today, well, you don't know everything about me, but I can tell you, you may already have guessed this. I am not a magician. I am not a fortune teller. See, nothing up my sleeve. Nothing up my sleeve, either sleeve. I have no crystal ball. I have no tarot cards. Yet, I made a prediction that came true. And actually, I can't really take any credit for having any kind of special skill because it was the easiest. Anybody could have predicted this, or anybody except Donald Trump. So we'll be talking today about something where he has really disappointed me, and he continues to disappoint me. So Putin rejects Trump proposed ceasefire ahead of Witkoff meeting in Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday rejected the terms of President Trump's proposed 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine, demanding that the West stop arming Kiev before the Kremlin would consider such an arrangement. While he said Moscow was willing to cease hostilities, Putin said Moscow would only agree to the Trump deal if it were changed substantially. We agree with proposals to cease hostilities in Ukraine, but this cessation must lead to a long-term peace and eliminate the root cause of the initial crisis, Putin said, without defining what he felt was the cause. We also want guarantees that Ukraine will not mobilize, train soldiers, or receive weapons during the 30-day ceasefire, the Russian president said, without indicating Russia would be willing to abide by the same conditions. Kiev's agreement to Trump's terms was met with mixed feelings in the Ukrainian public, but insiders have said that it was at least partially meant as a good faith effort to show Trump it is ready for peace. Trump himself on Wednesday said it's up to Russia now to agree to the ceasefire and bring his vision of peace to the region. Just 2 weeks before Kiev agreed to the Trump ceasefire proposal, Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service Chief Oleg Ivanchenko at a forum featuring Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and his cabinet said, there's a missing verb there, so I'll put in said, that it was Russia, not Ukraine, that needed a ceasefire. Russia needs a pause to restore its economy, regroup its forces, and launch a new aggression against Ukraine, Ivanchenko said. So there you have, that's one reason why Putin did not agree that he would stop disarming or regrouping or refreshing his troops and his material because, well, I believe that Ivanchenko has this right, but let's just dissect this whole thing. That article that I read you, and I'll link to the whole article so you can read it. These are excerpts, but this is well, when you look back at that I want to think when. Anybody remember the Seinfeld show? And there was, and George Costanza, one of the characters, is saying to another character, other character, you are so naive. And that's what I want to say to Donald Trump. Somebody should say to him, because he is so naive, or sometimes, and I voted for him, okay? I voted for him, but at least when it comes, he is sometimes just a little bit too full of himself, a little bit too cocksure of what he can accomplish, especially on the foreign scene, because, we have sanctions on Russia. Putin does not say what his objectives are, as that article points out, but we know what they are because if you follow the press, if you read up on this story, they're talking about something called the Minsk agreement that never went through, what's in that agreement is basically what Putin wants. So what he wants is Ukraine to basically cease to exist as an independent country. You have to remember, going back, that Ukraine was governed by, I guess you call it a puppet, just like Belarus is today. So by a puppet government that was just loyal to Moscow, and then there was a color revolution, orange revolution, and the Ukraine Ukrainian people threw out that puppet, and they elected Zelensky, freely elected Zelensky, and Putin does not like that. He does not recognize the independence of Ukraine. He believes it should rightfully belong to Russia, that it should be part of Russia. Never mind that Russia seized Ukraine. There was a war in 1852, and Russia, before the USSR, Soviet Union, they conquered the territory, and they seized it. There was never a willingness of Ukraine to be part of the Soviet Union or to be a possession of Russia. But Putin, it all boils down to his often expressed regret or lament that the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore, and that's what he wants to do, is reconstitute the Soviet Union. So, for instance, when he talks about Ukraine, he doesn't want them, that he invaded Ukraine because Ukraine was talking about joining NATO. Well, Poland is near Russia, and Poland is in NATO. You have two other, I think Latvia, the two other countries that are right on the border before that were in NATO, and then Finland, since the invasion of Ukraine, Sweden too, but Finland is right on the Russian border, and Finland joined and is now part of Ukraine. And has Putin invaded Finland? No. And one reason because he couldn't, which shows you, this is what really frustrated me about that famous or infamous White House meeting where Zelensky supposedly insulted the president and everything. And he was just trying to speak truth to the president, I guess, speak truth to power, because Trump has it all wrong, and he said millions of people being killed, and Zelensky said no, millions of people are not being killed, and that the Ukrainians were not succeeding against the Russians, and they're doing very well. It's a standoff. It's pretty much a stalemate. There is a website called, and you can get a daily email news report from them on it's called the Institute for the Study of War. The chairman is a former retired General Jack Keane. You sometimes can see him on TV, but Trump has also said, well, Ukraine doesn't have enough men. They can't. It's not Ukraine that imported North Korean soldiers, 20,000 I think they're up to right now, and those Korean soldiers aren't doing so well, North Korean soldiers, but that shows that Putin does not have as many men as he says. He has, or claims, or Trump thinks. Putin is importing weapons from North Korea, and from Iran, drones, and they don't have the weapons either. They're in the same position Ukraine is, and Ukraine can keep this up. Remember, they're fighting for their own land. That makes a big difference, just as we did in 1776. Who would have bet that 13 dinky little colonies could win independence from the world superpower at that time, England, the British Empire? Who would have thought? But we did, because it makes a difference if you're fighting on your home territory and you're fighting for your country. And that's the other thing that irks me, because if Ukraine is willing to fight and die to defend their country, who are we to say, no, don't do that? Too many people are getting killed. And he cuts off weapons and intelligence to Ukraine. Ukraine is supposedly our ally, which is another point that Trump misses, we all miss, is that we have a bad habit of betraying allies. This could be a whole other vlog. I won't take time on that. But that we make promises that Afghanistan as a recent example, but we promise to back somebody, and if something goes wrong or whatever, they can depend on the United States. That's why, to me, this mineral deal that Trump is talking about, that's supposed to be signed, and no security guarantees necessary, because once the American businesses are in there, then Putin will not dare invade, because if he does, we will send in troops to defend American interests. And that's not true. That is false. He will not do that. Trump, I just know he will not do that. You can disagree with me. That's why we have the comments section. I don't believe he will do that. And you have to remember, Trump, just a little less than 3 years, 3 years and 10 months from now, Trump will not be president anymore. And somebody else could be another liberal Democrat who can, we've seen this in the past. If Americans are in some country, then what do? We send a notice and we warn everybody, the people there, to evacuate and get out, and we don't send troops in. I just don't believe it. And it doesn't matter. Even if Trump would do it, he won't be president in less than 4 years, and there will be another president. We don't know who that president will be. So that agreement, which I said before, is unfair to Ukraine anyways. I won't bore you with that, but it's worthless. It's worthless, just like any agreement that Putin would sign. And that's the other point, is that this infamous White House meeting, get back to that White House meeting where Zelensky was so, supposedly so disrespectful or whatever. And he was, it started when Vance, vice president, was sitting there and said, we're going to negotiate an end to the war. And Zelensky said, what kind of negotiation are you talking about? Putin has negotiated many agreements with Ukraine in the past, and he's broken all of them. What kind of agreement or negotiation are you talking about? And Vance just very, very smugly said, a negotiation that ends the war. And Zelensky would properly say, what are the details? Now, what the Zelensky mistake was said, I'm here to sign this agreement, but there is I see some last-minute problems here, and we really need to suspend and go in and speak privately and not to the press. But he was absolutely right. He was correcting Trump on things that he believed that were wrong. I hear this figure all the time, that we gave Ukraine $350 billion, and the European Union, Europe gave about a third of that, and that's not true. Actually, if you look at the numbers, I've looked it up on Google. You can look it up again. But last time I checked, actually, we were about 115 billion, and the Europeans were 138 billion more. So they were actually contributing more. But unless he's counting some other aid, and then he boasts about, Obama only gave blankets, I gave Javelin missiles. So what? That's the other part that really bothered me. Now, if he gave him Javelin missiles and tanks and long-range missiles, HIMARS they're called, and artillery, and all the weapons to win. Before, this was at a time when Putin had not yet invaded. And another thing I'll throw in here, that's why it's called my thoughts for the day, because I have several, but they're always related. And Trump likes to boast, Putin did not invade Crimea, he did not invade Ukraine, when I was president in my first term. Well, that's true, but Putin also did not leave Crimea when Trump was president. Okay, he did not Trump became president, Putin was in Crimea, he had already invaded it, and Georgia too, don't forget, during, not our Georgia next to Russia, and they had, That was during Obama's term. So he has a point there, but we were not successful in getting him out, getting everything that Putin gained, which is what he wants now in this Ukraine deal. He does not want to give up anything. Okay, that's a point that drives me crazy, that Trump does not get this, that Putin is not going to give up anything. He won't give up any facts on the ground. Now, he will sign an agreement, maybe, but he won't keep it. And meanwhile, what is Trump doing? Well, he stopped supplying weapons to Ukraine, and he stopped sharing intelligence with Ukraine. So this president of ours, who supposedly wants to save lives, well, he's saving Russian lives, Russian soldiers' lives, but he is not saving many Ukrainian lives doing that. So now we'll see what happens, because what he should do is well, it's very simple, okay? If I were the president, it's very simple. If you're not somebody who's afraid of starting World War III, which is another problem I have, because that is nonsense, and that's why I think Trump, as much as I support what he's doing domestically, he is not a good leader. He is not a strong leader. He is not he's not a principled leader. Let's put it this way, because I am old enough. You're talking about starting World War III. I remember a time when we were really, the whole country, the whole world was worried about an actual World War III. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Now, this was obviously before a lot of you were born, but I was maybe 10 years old. Yeah, I was 10 years old at the time, and I remember it very well. It's childhood memory, but I remember it being an elementary school child, and practice air raid drills. You'd hear the air raid siren, because that's how they were expecting not just missiles but planes. You'd hear an air raid siren, and then we'd have to go down in the basement of the school. And I remember you'd see all these cans, these olive drab painted cans of water and other provisions, all right? It was supposed to be a fallout shelter. I don't think it would have been a very effective one if the surface had been, just carpet bombed with nuclear weapons. But the thing is, John F. Kennedy was president, and what did he do compared to what Trump would negotiate anything to avoid World War III. We know that because that's how he's acting now. What did John F. Kennedy do? He blockaded Cuba. He put a naval blockade around Cuba to prevent Soviet ships from delivering nuclear missiles to Cuba. That was the threat. If you don't remember that, there was, or you're not aware of it because you weren't born then, or because of our public education system. But that was what the crisis was. That that Khrushchev, the general secretary of the Communist Party at that time, the leader of the Soviet Union, was putting nuclear missiles, stationing them in Cuba, 90 miles off of our coast. And JFK said, no, we're not going to stand for that. And he blockaded. This is a physical military confrontation with a nuclear-armed, at that time, second superpower. And JFK did it. But Trump, there was actually an article I read in the Israeli press the other day that the Israelis are worried whether we would stand with Israel, even though they've never asked for troops or anything. But who should really be worried is Taiwan. If China invades Taiwan, will we have a sort of not really explicitly stated official policy, but it's well known to defend Taiwan if China invades. But if I was Taiwanese, I would have to wonder, will we? Or if China invades, will Trump say, too many people are getting killed, we have to stop all this killing, it's a stupid war, it's useless, I'm going to stop supplying weapons to Taiwan and stop providing intelligence to Taiwan, our supposed ally, who we are pledged to protect, to force Taiwan to basically surrender to China, to give China whatever China wants. And that's a situation where we're in right now with Ukraine, where Trump has been, nobody's pressuring. I mean, there's economic sanctions, and actually this is a way to, if Trump were serious and if he were a good leader, he would understand. First of all, he would talk to Zelensky and say, what is the exact situation? They're going to take his word for it. He's the leader, okay? And then I would go, well, first of all, I would go to the Pentagon, to head of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I said, if we wanted to push Russia out of Ukraine, could we do it? And don't worry, I'm not going to order you to do it. I just want to know, as it's a tactical question, could we do it if we wanted to do it, if we thought it was in our interest? And I assume that the answer, looking at Russia today, that the answer would be yes, that we could. I mean, if the answer is no, then you stop right there. Because if we can't push Russia out, I mean, militarily, nothing, never mind starting World War III or political ramifications, if we don't have the power to push Russia out of Ukraine, if we came to a knockdown, drag-out battle, then obviously Ukraine's not going to do it. But if we could, if the answer is yes, which is what I would predict it would be, then I would say, how many men would we need? How many soldiers would we need to do it? And I think you would probably say 100,000. We'll say 200,000, whatever. So you would say to Ukraine, or we would say, does Ukraine have that many? Or ask Zelensky, do you have that many people? Soldiers. And if he said yes, then it's very simple. So you go back to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and you say, okay, what weapons would you use? What weapons would you use? How many would you need of each weapon? Make me a list. And then take the list and hand it to the Secretary of Defense and say, okay, every item on that list I want it sent to Ukraine as soon as possible, and if it needs anything that gets destroyed, replenish it. And end of story. But that's another thing that there was. Maybe I'll discuss it in another thought. This is already getting pretty long, another log. But there was another article and another. I read very widely, and there are news and current events and things in Asia. There's another great paper website, the Asia Times, and the Asia Times had an article, and they're going through that. They are the Ukrainians are making great advances with technology, and it's offsetting the Russian tactic or strategy is the same as it's been from time immemorial, almost all the way back to Napoleon, and definitely during World War II. It just throw human waves, just sacrifice human beings and just send wave and wave and wave after them, whereas the Ukrainians are a little smarter than that, and they are now. They've ramped up their drone production, and they just launched an attack of about 100 drones on Moscow. And they are, and there was another, well, this was not so widely reported, but do you remember I'm sure you remember the Grim Beeper thing that I guess coup that they just brilliant tactic that the Israelis did against Hezbollah. They maimed a lot of them. They killed a couple, but they weren't trying to do that. One of the people behind it was interviewed. It was these beepers that were rigged with explosives, and they created a shell company and sold about 5,000 of these beepers to Hezbollah, and then they all went off at one time in the same day, and it was killed and maimed, because they would have these beepers on their persons, and it was meant, first of all, not to kill anybody near the target, the Hezbollah member, but also because, as this person explained, it was on 60 Minutes, explained that we didn't want dead bodies. We wanted living people walking around with hands blown off and missing eyes, and et cetera, as an example of what Israel could do. Now, you're saying by now, what does that have to do with Ukraine? Well, Ukraine, learned from that, and they did, I guess you would call, I don't know, visor gate. These drones that people fly, soldiers fly. There's these, just like these 3D glass, vision things that you can buy. That's how they control the drones. They use it. They don't look at a computer screen, but they have an actual kind of visor that they wear on their heads. Well, the Ukrainians, they created a shell company, and they made some visors, and they rigged them with explosives. So the same thing as the Israelis do with the beepers, and these guys put them on and bang, blew their eyes out. So they're very clever that way. But imagine, I just told you about the drones falling on Moscow. There are long-range missiles. If the kind of missiles and rockets that are falling on Kiev, if those same rockets with the same capabilities are falling on Moscow, if Moscow were watching just their buildings all around them being blown up, that would make a big difference. So the question is, why aren't we supplying them? And we aren't supplying them because Trump won't do it. And that's, I guess the last thought I'll end up, because I got sidetracked, I said about how Taiwan has to wonder and how Israel is starting to wonder, because Trump is very mercurial, and he could pledge his undying support for Israel, but if Netanyahu says the wrong thing that insults, that hurts Trump's feelings, and he'll just, just like that, cut off the aid, cut off the intelligence. We know it because he did it with Ukraine. And you have to remember, Ukraine, they had, when the Soviet Union fell, this is the important part that nobody talks about and should, and relates to everything I've said, that when the Soviet Union fell, Ukraine had nuclear weapons. Russians had stationed nuclear weapons in Ukraine. So you have to ask yourself, would Russia dare invade if Ukraine had nukes? And of course they wouldn't. But Ukraine today does not have nukes. Why do they not have nukes? Because they gave them up. Why did they give them up? Because of an agreement that we would, and talk about broken agreements, Putin signed it too, that Putin would respect the sovereignty of Ukraine, and we pledged, the West pledged, that we would have Ukraine's back, that if Putin ever invaded, if Russia ever invaded Ukraine, that we would be there for them, that we would give them all the support that they need. I honestly don't know if that agreement promised soldiers, or that we would send soldiers, but the point is, they gave up their nukes because they believed us. And, that was obviously a mistake. And this is a problem. This goes way beyond Ukraine, which is why I'm ending on this, because we are a superpower, but we cannot do everything ourselves. We need allies. And to have allies, they have to depend on us. When we say we are going to do something, we have to do it. And if we don't do it, then we're going to get to a point where people just won't ally with us anymore. They just won't trust us. And I fear that we're really getting to that point, because you have to go all the way back to England and World War II to find the last time that we unequivocally backed an ally, England and France, that we unequivocally backed somebody. Before that, I would say 1953, Korea. South Korea. So we backed them. But I wonder, we have a tripwire there. We have like 30,000 soldiers there. But if those North Koreans, if 1 million of them came over the border, would we send troops? If Kennedy were president, the answer is an obvious yes. If Eisenhower were president, I'm sure he would. But Trump, I honestly don't know. It's a question I can't answer, and that's the situation that we're in today. And that's enough. That's enough thoughts for today. Enough for you to digest. I'm always happy to hear your thoughts in the comment section below the video. But for now, that's it. If you could subscribe, that would really be great. Share this video with anyone you think would benefit from it. But most of all, come back and see me again. I would love to see all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.